You open your eyes. Before you even get out of bed, your phone is already in your hand. Notifications, messages, headlines. In seconds, you're connected to the entire world. Think about that for a moment. Your grandparents didn't have this. No one in human history had this. Never before has there been so much comfort, so much information, so much freedom of choice. And yet, there's a question many people carry in silence. A question that's rarely said out loud, but that appears in the pauses, when the video ends, when the music stops, when the house becomes quiet for a moment. Why do I feel empty? It's not a lack of effort. It's not a lack of achievements. It's something harder to name. Something money can't buy, entertainment can't fill, and success can't solve. Today we're going to talk about that. Not with easy answers, because this subject doesn't have easy answers, but with honesty. From a very early age, most of us learn a script. No one sits down and explains this script. It's simply there, in school, in family conversations, in the culture around us. The script goes like this: study, work, build a career, make money, buy things, be happy. For decades, this model made sense. It worked for entire generations who lived under much harsher conditions, where having material security was already a huge victory. The problem is that the world changed, but the script stayed the same. Today, many people reach the end of the script. They studied. They work. They have an apartment, a car, Netflix, food in the fridge. They did everything right, and then they look at their lives and feel nothing in particular. Not joy, not satisfaction. Just a kind of automatic motion. Wake up, work, consume, sleep, repeat. The philosopher Henry David Thoreau described this in the 19th century, long before smartphones, as lives of quiet desperation. People who live fulfilling obligations without ever asking whether they actually want those things. What changed since Thoreau isn't the nature of the problem? It's the speed at which it hides. Today we have infinite ways to never stay in silence long enough to notice that something is wrong. At the end of the 19th century, a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche made one of the most disturbing observations in the history of Western thought. He said that God was dead. But be careful, he wasn't making a religious statement. Nietzsche was pointing to something broader. The structure that for centuries gave meaning to human life was collapsing. For thousands of years, people lived within collective systems of meaning. Religion, traditions, community, rituals. These structures answered the deepest questions of existence. Who am I? Why am I here? What should I do with my life? With the arrival of modernity, science, the Enlightenment, individualism, many of those structures began to weaken. And Nietzsche saw what few were willing to admit. Without these structures, human beings drift. Not because they are weak, but because finding meaning alone, starting from zero, is one of the hardest tasks that exists. The consequence, according to him, would be exactly what we are seeing today, an era of material comfort combined with a deep crisis of purpose. People who have everything they need to survive, but no longer know why they are alive. The historian Yuval Noah Harari summarized this tension well. For the first time in history, more people die from excess than from scarcity. More people suffer from loneliness than from hunger. More people struggle with too many choices than with too few. We live in the most materially prosperous moment in human history. And yet, or perhaps because of that, the crisis of meaning has never been more intense. There is another component to this equation that rarely receives the attention it deserves. Did you know that the average human touches their phone more than 2,000 times a day? 2,000. Each touch releases a small dose of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with anticipation of reward. It's the same mechanism that makes you look at the door before someone enters. The same mechanism that made your ancestors check the bushes for predators. But now this system is being activated by notifications, likes, and 15-second videos, continuously, all day long. The result isn't happiness, it's exhaustion. The more intense stimulation you consume, the harder it becomes to feel satisfaction in simple things. A conversation with a friend, a sunset, a book, a thought developed all the way to the end. Technology researcher Tristan Harris has a sentence that summarizes this perfectly. Social media isn't competing with other apps. It's competing with sleep, with family dinners, with the time you spend alone with your own thoughts, and it's winning. What this creates in the long run is a mind that is always occupied but rarely present, always reacting but rarely reflecting, always connected but rarely at peace, and a mind that never stops, never finds itself. In 2023, the United States government declared something that would have been unthinkable just a few decades ago: a loneliness epidemic. The U.S. Surgeon General published a report stating that the lack of social connection is as harmful to health as smoking. 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. We are more connected than any previous generation. We have access to people all over the world. We can communicate in real time with someone on the other side of the planet. And yet, we have never been so lonely. Why? Part of the answer lies in how modern life reorganized human communities. For hundreds of thousands of years, we lived in small and stable groups, extended families, neighborhoods where everyone knew each other, collective rituals that created a sense of belonging. Today, mobility is valued, cities are anonymous, community ties have weakened, and screens have replaced part of human contact, but they cannot replicate what it offers. Digital connection is real, but in many ways, it is a thinner version of human contact. It lacks touch, it lacks presence. It lacks the weight of truly being with someone. Human beings weren't designed only to survive. They were designed to belong. And when that belonging is absent, no matter how many likes you receive, something fundamental remains empty. Viktor Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. While observing who survived and who gave up on living, he came to a conclusion that changed psychology forever. It wasn't the physically strongest who survived. It wasn't necessarily the youngest. It was those who had a why, a child waiting in another country, an unfinished work, a loved one, a mission that needed to be completed. Frankl summarized this in a famous sentence: "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." He called this need the will to meaning, and argued that it is the deepest motivation of human beings, more fundamental than pleasure, more fundamental than power. And here lies the cruel paradox of modern life. We built a world that eliminated much of physical suffering, diseases that once wiped out entire generations, hunger, daily war, brutal labor from childhood. But by eliminating suffering, we also eliminated many of the contexts where meaning naturally emerged. You don't need to fight to put food on the table, but you also don't feel the deep meaning of feeding your family. You don't need to build your own house, but you also don't feel the pride of having created something with your own hands. You don't need to depend on a community to survive, but you also don't experience the belonging that dependence created. Comfort is real, but it has an invisible cost. So what do we do with all of this? First, understand that the feeling of emptiness is not a personal defect. It is a rational response to a world that optimized for comfort and forgot to optimize for meaning. Second, realize that the opposite of emptiness is not happiness. It's purpose, and purpose doesn't appear in your feed. It isn't sold in a subscription. It doesn't arrive with your next professional achievement. It appears when you ask yourself honestly, what truly matters to me? What would I be willing to build, care for, or defend, even if it were difficult? Third, and perhaps most important, meaning requires presence. You don't find purpose by consuming content about purpose. You find purpose by creating things, by caring for people, by being present in conversations, by accepting responsibilities that matter. Emptiness doesn't disappear when you find the right answer. It disappears when you stop running from the questions. Maybe modern life feels empty because we've never been so well equipped to avoid silence. And it's in silence that the most important questions live. Why do you live? For whom? For what? These questions don't have universal answers. But perhaps the fact that you're here watching this is already a sign that you're ready to start answering them.